Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee. I am happy to welcome you to Reading with Your Kids. We're coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very delighted and absolutely honored that you would join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in that mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. They can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, Castbox, Audible, Player FM, Boomplay, Ghana, wherever you find your favorite shows. Two wonderful guests for you today. First up, Jacob Grant will be here to celebrate Umami. And later in the show, we'll meet Wade Hudson. He is celebrating the day Madear Voted. Hey, my friends, we are really excited. Reading with Your Kids podcast is returning to the Chicago Toy and Game Fair November 9th and 10th at the Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois. Let your imagination come to life at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair, the ultimate family play experience. Dive into hands-on fun with the hottest new toys and games, meet the inventors behind your favorite products, and even get a sneak peek at what will top holiday wish lists this year. From interactive play zones to exciting competitions and exclusive giveaways, there's something for every member of the family at the Chicago Toy and Game Fair. And don't miss the Young Inventor Challenge, where kids showcase their creativity and innovation. Who knows? You just might meet the next big inventor. Join us at the Donald E. Stevens Convention Center in Rosemont, Illinois, November 9th and 10th. Whether you're a game enthusiast or just looking for a fun weekend with the family, the Chicago Toy and Game Fair has it all. And like I said, the Reading with Your Kids podcast will be there, and you may have a chance to be heard on the show. Get your tickets today and bring the magic of play to life. Visit shytag.com for details, and be sure to use the discount code READ, R-E-A-D, at checkout to save on tickets. Hey, my friend, Jed Lee here. We all know that for kids to develop a lifelong passion for reading, they need to get engaged with books that spark their imaginations and interests. Wouldn't it be great if they also get interested in history and geography at the same time? That's where the great fantasy book series that kids simply can't put down, The Adventures of Jimmy and Andrew, come in. A 9-year-old boy and his 3,300-year-old telepathic dog, who is rescued from the shelter, set off for adventures around the world with Jimmy's archaeologist parents. The first book in the series, American Stonehenge, has more than 300 positive reviews. To learn more, please visit jimmyandandrew.com. That's jimmyandandrew.com. Join us right now from the great city of Chicago. Our guest is here today to celebrate his brand new picture book. It's called Umami. Please welcome to the show, Jacob Grant. Hey, Jacob, how are you?
Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm doing great. It's been a busy morning. I'm working pretty hard on the next book in line, and yeah, I'm in my happy place right now.
There you go. There you go. Jacob and I found out we are brothers from different mothers in our life lived experience, living in the cities and then becoming parents and saying, I don't want to live in the city anymore.
We have proximity to the
right.
city.
Yes.
Best of both worlds.
I tell people all the time, we are in the most southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts here, our lovely neighborhood of Reedville. And it actually took me 2 years to make the connection that I was creating the Reading with Your Kids podcast in Reedville, because I'm a little slow.
Wildly appropriate. Yeah.
So tell us about Umami.
Now Umami, my new book, it's coming out October 29th. This is the story of a penguin who lives in a fishing village and is clearly tired of eating cold fish every day, day in, day out. And they want to go out into the world to find more exciting foods to eat. And so they adventure out and find all sorts of things in the big city. They're able to try all variety of foods, and foods that are sour, foods that are sweet, foods that are salty, bitter foods, even umami foods. And so Umami goes out and tries all this new stuff, eating ramen, Brussels sprouts, sauerkraut, etc. Really a wide variety of foods. And they are so excited, inspired by this food, that they decide to bring it home to the other penguins to share.
Oh.
You gotta have to wait and see how that goes, how they receive something so different.
Yeah, I'm imagining a lot of heartburn down in Antarctica. Your premise of the story reminds me a lot of a movie that I just saw. It's called My Penguin Friend.
Oh.
And my dog recently passed away.
Huh.
And he was with us for 13 or 14 years. And so we were sad, and my wife said, well, why don't we go to the movie? There's this movie called My Penguin Friend, and it's playing at the local art movie house, and let's go to see it. And I thought, well, that sounds okay. And so we're down there, and it's about 6 hours after we said goodbye to my dog, and the movie starts, and we're down in Brazil, and we're seeing this adorable little kid, maybe 6, 7 years old, and he's running around, and he's really excited. Tomorrow is his birthday, and they live in a fishing village, and he's real excited, and he wants his dad to take him out fishing with him. And Dad's like, no, the weather's kind of rough, and oh, Dad, please, please, please. So Dad says, okay, we'll go out and we'll fish for a little bit. And he goes out. 5 minutes into this kid drowns. And I'm sitting there going, you're kidding me. Why did you? And then,
uplifting film.
And then the dad is sad, and he's spending his life, he's so sad, and he's miserable, doesn't talk to anybody. And then a penguin comes into his life, and he becomes friends. And then the penguin is captured by these scientists, and I'm
Wow.
like, I turned to my wife and I said, if this penguin dies, I'm going to go up and hit the manager of the movie theater or something. I don't know.
Not the right tone you were looking for.
Exactly. Not the day for it. Any other day, I probably could have handled it. But and the worst thing was, the penguin looked like my fat little beagle who had just passed away.
That's the thing about penguins too, is they have such a great character in terms of being like, they're like cute little animals, but they're also so anthropomorphic. Like they're just like, they walk like a person, with their little penguin walk. And they're just such like a natural kind of character for a story because of that. Like, it's real easy to say like, oh, here's a penguin, and they're kind of moving around in the world like you would move around in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And was that the inspiration to write this, or was there a picky eater in your life that you were trying to inspire to be a little more adventurous?
This book has quite a few inspirations because it drew from a number of things in my life, but mainly the children. I have now, my son he's 9, wow, and my daughter is now 6, and they have, their taste can be both like very picky, but also kind of surprising at times. My son, he's one that he's always loved spicy food, even from like the time he was maybe 3 or 4, and we'd be at a restaurant and he's just like, he's in that salsa. He's like, he wants more salsa. But there'll be funny things where they'll just say, not that anymore. No chicken nuggets. Can't do it anymore. And my daughter, she is one that, any sense of flavor is a spice. It is, so like we'll give her, I don't know, just the most bland food, and if it has a little bit of saltiness or something, she'll just be like, spicy, it's spicy. Or like, well, that's not really what spicy means. But that was a big part of the inspiration for the story because, I, at least now, like, going through this book and talking about the 5 tastes, bitter, salt, sweet, umami, sour. And talking about that, I'm like, oh, well, hopefully if I can talk about what it means for something to taste sour in the story without just saying it was sour, my kids will at least be able to tell me like what's wrong with our food.
Mm-hmm.
More specifically, what they don't like. So yeah, my kids were a big inspiration for this story. But also for the longest time, I've wanted to write something, like a culinary kind of story. As my brother he's in that world. For years, he was a chef in Chicago. He worked at a number of different restaurants, and, being my brother, I got to benefit from a lot of that just going to those restaurants. But yeah, just the idea of the variety of food and how exciting food can be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. You just reminded me of a happy memory. Not this time. There was a little restaurant opened up in our neighborhood of Reedville a number of years ago, very, very tiny, and it's not in a great spot. There's no place to park, and we walked down to it one night, and we're looking at the menu, and the chef came out, and he said, would you trust me to just make you something? I said, well, this is different. And he goes, what kind of protein do you like? I like chicken. And my wife said whatever she liked, and he made something different for everybody, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It's the most amazing dining experience I've ever had. And unfortunately, it closed shortly thereafter because it was just in a bad location. But
that leap of faith, right? To just be chef's whim. Because the chef knows what they can do best. Right. They know how to impress. So.
Yeah.
Gotta trust.
That must be fun for you to go in and try your brother's new recipes. Was there anyone that just kind of like blew you away?
Oh man, that's tough. There's been so many different things over the years, but for some reason there's one that like stands out from when like he was early on in cooking. But he did a dish, like a French dish, a cassoulet, which is like a bean-based dish. And there was just something about that meal, and maybe it also had to do with, like, the people that were there. Like, there's a whole experience that comes with that. But it really, like, it blew my mind. And I remember that being one of the first times I was just, like, knocked my socks off, being like, wow, like, you can really cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, he also used to do a Portuguese chicken dish just, like, at home. It'd be, like, random dinner, making Portuguese chicken. And that also is like, I could eat that all the time.
Awesome. It's funny, kids, and a lot of adults, can be very, very picky and very afraid to, and I was probably this way, growing up in an Irish household where it was boiled everything. And, until I met my beautiful wife from Puerto Rico, and then we kind of expanded, and, I love going to different places and trying new things. Why do you think some people are just really hesitant to try? Because, I mean, all you need is a bite, and, you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, well, I can relate to that. I remember being a kid who was picky about everything. And I don't think it was until my teenage years where I was just hungry enough to be like, yeah, I'll eat that. Give me that food. And my parents were always pretty adventurous eaters, and so we'd go out for Indian, we'd eat Thai, we'd try different things. And I really fell in love with all those different flavors around that age. But, similar, I, grew up eating food that my parents were both working parents, so they were just like, whatever was quick, not the most flavorful stuff. My early years, there wasn't a lot there to be inspired by. But, I think it was in art school when I met my wife, my now wife. She is Filipino-American, grew up in Kentucky. But when we started dating, it was like, just opened my eyes to all sorts of different foods. Mm-hmm. And that really expanded my interest in like, oh wow, like every culture has something interesting to offer in cuisine. But yeah.
Yeah, cool. You obviously, there's a lot of creative talent in your family between you and your brother, and I don't know if anybody else is an artist of sorts. What do you think, or how did your parents inspire you or support your creativity?
Yeah, there does seem to be this sort of creative leaning. And I would say for the most part, it comes from my mom's side of the family. My grandma, who we spent a lot of time with as kids, she was always really good at drawing. And I remember being very little and sitting at the table with her, and we'd be like, "Oh, can you draw us a cat?" And like it would look like a cat, and that just like blew our minds. We'd sit there like, "Wow!" And because of her sort of encouragement and the fact that we would sit and draw, but also my mom, she was going to art school when we were little, ended up going into art education and taught grade school art. She taught kids in high school. So she was an art educator for many, many years. And, it was a real benefit to us to just have our eyes open, because they would take us to art museums whenever we would travel as kids. And we didn't do a lot of travel, but if we went to Washington, D.C., we were going to the museums. When we went to San Francisco, we hit the museums. And, that was always a big inspiration for me. And just, having that little bit of encouragement is really so monumental for any kid, right? Just having somebody say like, "Oh, wow, what you're doing is of value." And so like when I would make art and they would encourage that, it just gave me the urge to just keep making it.
Right. Yeah, it's a real difference than having a parent say, "Oh, okay, that's cute. What are you going to do for a real job?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's tough now, as a person who's gone through art school and has done this career path, and for my own kids, I'm always like, "But do you really want to do art?" And that comes from knowing the struggle of trying to make it as an artist. And there's a reality to that where if they show me that they need to make art, like that is what their soul needs to do, then I'm like, okay, all right, like I'm not gonna push them in that direction, but I need to see it come from them.
Yeah. One of my mentors, I've been doing educational magic shows for 35 years, and one of my mentors said to me, when I was deciding, should I leave this career that I'm fairly successful at and make the jump, which was what my wife was encouraging me to do. He said, if you can imagine yourself being happy doing anything else, then do anything else. But if you can't, you got to go for it. And he was right.
Yeah. And like, even for myself at times when the career is challenging and I'm like, if I could go back in time, would I have done something else? And the answer is no. Like, I would still have chosen this path because, like, my love for just this creative energy, and now, like, and this took me a while when I got into making books because it was before I had children, but now it's more like the excitement of making this thing that I then get to share with these kids. And, like, it is a part of them and their interaction with their parents. And it's such a cool feeling to be like, oh, like these are out in the world. These books are out in the world. So yeah, no regrets there.
Well, I'm really happy you said that, because one of the things that I oftentimes ask authors is, have you ever taken the time to think about all the families that are curled up on a couch together reading your book? And most of them say no. In fact, a lot of them start crying because they haven't. But I'm glad you have, because I think that that makes the struggle a little bit easier to get through.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most definitely. Because, the amount of story time reading, like every night we read with the kids. And I know, like, what an important activity that is to just, like, have that moment at the end of the day where we are just sitting together, just reading a book. And, like, some of those books are good, some of them are bad, but it doesn't even matter because it's really just about being there, and having that time. So yeah, it feels really special to know, like, that book is playing that part in people's lives.
Yeah.
Especially like the idea that I have a number of books that have been translated to other languages, and that people in other countries across the world are also having that experience, and like it's kind of mind blowing when you really start to think about it.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm really glad you mentioned that you still spend time. I think you said your kids are 6 and 9.
Yes.
And so many parents out there, and I was really bummed out when my kids started reading, when my son started reading independently, at a kindergarten, I think. And, but my daughter was younger, so I still read to my daughter, and my son would come in, and so we'd still read together. But when my daughter started reading independently, I'm thinking, oh man, this stinks. Now she's going to be reading and she's not. And her teacher said, "Oh, you got to keep reading with them. Got to keep reading with them." And I'm so thankful to Mrs. Kelly because we did. And the neat thing about reading with your kids is that turns into cooking with your kids and throwing the baseball around with your kids or the football around and going to movies with your kids and talking about music with your kids. It's just that foundation of friendship and love that a life can be built on.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I didn't even consider that. But yeah, it's a good foundation of just saying like, yeah, we spend time together. We do like a thing. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, it's been good.
Yeah.
I definitely have a lot of that in my life right now in terms of activities with the kids. And I used to coach my son's soccer team. Now I'm coaching my daughter's soccer team as he's kind of moved on to a higher level of soccer. But me and my daughter now, like I have to coach tonight. She has a practice tonight. And it's such a trip. And as much work as it can be at times, because it is work and mostly in emails to parents, etc. But it is just like such a cool thing to be able to spend that time and have this as like something hopefully they'll remember in a positive way. I don't know.
Well, I they probably won't remember well, they'll remember the dumb things that we do. But I think they'll remember that we were there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I feel like that's a win.
Oh, it absolutely is a win. And the neat thing is that in turn, we know that they're going to be there for us and there for each other.
Yeah.
Hey, one of the books that was on your website, which is very, very cool, but one of the books that caught my eye is This Book Can Read Your Mind. Being somebody that has studied the magical arts and learned how to, quote unquote, read somebody's mind, I want to learn a little bit about this book.
So, all right. This Book Can Read Your Mind is written by Susanna Lloyd. She's an author from the UK. And so I did the art for this book. And I remember when I heard from that publisher and I got to read the manuscript and I was like, oh, this sounds super fun, because the whole trick of the book is that it will say something on the page like, whatever you do, don't think of blank. And then whatever you think of, it's going to appear on the next page, right? So don't think of pink elephants. Oh, well, of course, you did it. Now they're here. And it's this device that is basically generating these things, and it's like, oh, wait, warning at the beginning, don't think of anything too silly, because the machine itself is very sensitive. And so, of course, the silliness just ramps up and up because the scientists keep saying things like, oh, well, you're not going to think of them riding around on unicycles and playing the tuba, are you? And of course, that's the next thing that appears. And it really is it was a blast to illustrate, because first I got to create this little device machine that operates on the pages, and it kind of goes haywire more and more. But then lots of elephants in ridiculous situations, and yeah, it was fun.
I love that. Do you have a preference, authoring and illustrating your own books or illustrating somebody else's?
I think I always have to go with, I love just making a new thing, and the, not only just like the art side of that, but the, getting to write a new story and come up with a new idea and then build the art around that. And I think that's just my background. I love being able to create. I love having that control of the whole thing, and when I have like a vision in mind. So it's always going to be wanting to make my own books. Now, the other side of that is I would love to get hired to illustrate more books. It doesn't happen that often. But, when it does, it's just a nice way to to not feel like you have to be the one with the brilliant concept that you had to sell to the publisher, because that is the hard part. And just being hired to come on and make it work for this new idea it's a lot less pressure in that way.
Yeah. I wonder if there's ever a case where an author is hired to write an illustrator's book, like an illustrator just sit down and do the art and put it together, and they hand it to an author and go, have at it.
Yeah, like it would be such a different way of going about things. I wonder if it ever happens with because there's a number of books out there that are wordless picture books, right? And to be honest, I've never been a big fan of wordless picture books. I love the interaction of the text and the image. So when you just have one, it feels a little more flat to me. So the idea, though, that maybe somebody could pitch a wordless picture book, and then they're like, we want to add some words to this. We got just the author for the job. It would be an interesting thought.
Yeah, interesting. If anybody out there knows of a situation like that, let us know. We'll have you on. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, there's a good chance it's happened at one point or another, right? I mean, publishing.
So what you mentioned to us earlier that you're working on the next project. Can you just tease us a little bit?
Yes. So the project I am working on right now, I was just drawing a bunch of seagulls. So the story I'm working on is called Turtle Slept In. And this is the story of a sea turtle who is the last to hatch out of its nest. And so it arrives ready to party, ready to make that journey across the beach with all its brothers and sisters, but everybody's gone. And it's also now the middle of the day. And so this one sea turtle has to adventure across a very busy, hazardous beach in the middle of the day. And I would say on its own, but it does find a buddy to kind of help it along its path.
All right. Well, we want to give you an open invitation to come back to celebrate that book when it's ready and hatched.
Hey, I'd love to.
There you go. Hey, where can we go to find out more about you and find out more about Umami?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Jacob Grant Books. I will be doing a number of different promotional stuff over the next month before the book comes out. Be doing some art giveaways, some stuff like that. So keep in tune there. You can find me at jacobgrantbooks.com. It has all my other books up there, as well as a bunch of artwork and a little bit more about my background and everything. But yeah, I'm on all the social media. You can find me out there, except TikTok. I'm not on TikTok at the moment.
I guess
I can't figure that one out.
I can't either. So, we've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Umami. It is a delightful and happy picture book. None of that little, my penguin best friend sad story that I was telling you about earlier. It's all sorts of great fun. Our guest has been Jacob Grant. Jacob, thanks so much for being with us.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from the beautiful Garden State of New Jersey. Our guest is here today to celebrate really important book. It's called The Day Madear Voted. Please welcome to the show, Wade Hudson. Hey, Wade, how are you?
So I'm doing well, Jed. Glad to be with you and looking forward to our conversation. And, we were just talking about the Boston area. I mean, that's where you're recording from. And as I shared with you earlier, my wife and I actually met in Cambridge, and we lived in Boston for a couple of years before moving to New Jersey.
And there's so many people who come through Boston because of all the colleges and so many people visit. It's a really dynamic city. It's a really expensive city.
It really is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's dynamic. I don't envy any of the young people trying to find housing these days.
That's right.
In this
That's
area.
right. That's right.
Actually, throughout the whole Northeast. But
yeah, well, actually, it's countrywide, Jed. I mean, it's difficult. Even in New Jersey, apartments are so expensive now. And what's happening, and we don't want to go off on a tangent here, but what's happening is there are people who are doing well, particularly in the New Jersey, New York metropolitan area, and they get great jobs in New York, but they get housing or apartments in New Jersey because they can travel from New Jersey to Manhattan in 30, 40 minutes, So they are willing to pay, exorbitant prices for a condo or for an apartment, but the people who actually live here can't compete with that.
Right. Yeah. And we have, I know in Boston, there are a lot of houses that are being bought by folks from overseas.
That's right.
Investments.
That's right.
Big investment, venture capitalist firms that are buying up the houses. And
that's right. That's right.
There's so many challenges between the cost of college, the cost of living and housing. I don't think we're going to be able to solve them today.
No. But it's good sometimes to discuss them and to get a handle on really what's going on. And I think that's important as well.
I agree. I think one of the problems is that the country, and I think this will probably lead into with the day Madear voted. I think the country right now, there's such a divide, and people who are intentionally driving us apart.
Yes,
we're almost afraid to start having some deep, meaningful conversations because I don't want to say the wrong thing and get this person.
Yeah.
And that's a real shame. It's a real disservice.
Yeah. I mean, we certainly have a whole lot more in common than we do that separates us. So I just think that we need to. There have always obviously been issues and concerns that need to be addressed, but we've always found ways to deal with them and to move the country forward toward a more perfect union. And so I think that what's happening now, from my perspective, is just one of those serious times that is forcing us to confront who we are and to decide as a nation where we want to go, who we want to be. And I think in some ways it may be a good thing. I am hopeful because there are so many young people who I think get it. Unlike when I was growing up, I grew up in a segregated town. I grew up during the end of the civil rights movement, which is the story about my mother voting comes from that experience. But my kids and the generation under them, they are interacting with people from different ethnic groups and, the culture, that the American culture now is a merger of so many different cultures, from what you talk about, Black, Hispanic, obviously European, so we have a distinct American culture, but it belongs to all of us. And I think younger people are starting to get it. Again, when I was growing up, I loved soul music, R&B. That was supposed to be the music for black people. Country and Western at that particular time was music for white people. Pop music was more for white people, although there were some successful black recording artists. But now I think there's a mixture, and if you ask a young person what their favorite music is or their favorite group, they're gonna pulled from so many different genres.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, as I hate to say it like this, as those our age move out the way, that I think it will be, we'll move closer to achieving that more perfect union. I mean, I really hold that dear, because if you don't have hope, I mean, what else is there? I mean, you really have to have the hope, and I certainly do.
Yeah, I agree with you. You were talking about Boston. You were living here in the 70s. Back then, there were neighborhoods.
Yep.
The Irish neighborhood. There's a Chinese neighborhood.
That's right. That's right.
And
South Boston.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I always lived. I was mentioning my first apartment was in East Boston at that time. It was a very Italian neighborhood, and I was the only one on my block that didn't speak Italian.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just loved. I'm weird because I always loved going and learning about different cultures and
Yeah.
immersed in different cultures. Just like, this is different. This is cool. This is neat.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So the day Madear voted, this is based on your mom.
Yeah. Jed, I was in the process of writing my memoir called Defiant Growing Up in the Jim Crow South, which came out about a year and a half ago. And in writing that memoir, I remembered so many experiences that I had sort of cast aside. And one of them was seeing my mother vote for the very first time in her life. And for more than half her life, she could not vote. So she didn't even try to vote because she knew that she couldn't. And that was the situation for most of the people, almost all black people in my small black town of Mansfield, Louisiana. And I just remembered how excited she was and how empowered she was to be able to vote for the very first time. And I said, I think I need to capture this. And what I first did, Jed, was to write a poem, just a general poem about it. And then after I started reading the poem, and I shared it with a few people, they said, wow, maybe you should look at doing a picture book so young readers can understand how far we've come. We still have a long way to go, but how far we've come and understand, some of the struggles and the successes that have been made. And so that's what I did, wrote a manuscript for a picture book and submitted it to Nancy Paulson Books. I don't know if you know Nancy. And she loved the story. And we got Don Tate to illustrate it, and he did a fantastic job. We've been promoting it, and it's amazing how children, young readers relate to it, but also how it moves even older people. Mm-hmm. And I think it really helps to illustrate the importance of voting and what it could mean, particularly at this time when, for so many people, voting is not viewed as an important civic engagement. So, I think the book is, excuse me, I'm fighting a cold here.
No worries.
But I think the book is going to continue to do well because it shares a history of, what it was like before my mother could vote, but also it's inspirational. It shows what can happen. I'm excited about the book because, again, it shares, it lifts up an important period in our history that we should not forget. And when we did the book launch, we actually had the NAACP, the local chapter here in New Jersey. We did the book launch at the East Orange Public Library. And so we asked the NAACP to come in and if they would talk about voting and the importance of it, but also offer opportunities for people who were not registered to register to vote. And a number of people did register. And we also engaged young people. There was a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old who talked about the importance of voting to them and what it means to them. And it was a really great gathering of community, and just really understanding the importance of, first of all, taking a stand, because we talked about the struggle to achieve the right to vote. I mean, it just didn't happen by osmosis. People had to stand up and pay a price to achieve that right. But then once that right is achieved, whatever rights that we are fighting for, then you have to really exercise and walk in that right. If you don't do that, then you're doing an injustice to the folks who paid the price to achieve the right. Mm-hmm. So I think young people really understood that, and as we have a chance to talk to them, because I think you were talking earlier about having conversations. I think one of the problems that we don't have conversations across political lines, mm-hmm. but I don't think we have enough conversations within our own families, mm-hmm. and within our own extended families and with our own communities. Each of us has a journey that we are on. Many of us have been on it for a long time, like me. And there's a lot that I can share. There's a lot that you can share, and we have to really be open to share, particularly with younger people, and do it honestly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how they become empowered, inspired, and even understand that they too can play a role in helping make this a better place for all of us to live.
Yeah, I agree. The reason I launched Reading with Your Kids was to really emphasize that bonding that happens in the conversations that happen between parent and child when we're reading together, whether it's snuggled up on the couch with our little ones, mm-hmm. or continue to read when our kids get older and can read independently. Having those conversations, empowering a kid by just asking, what do you think?
Yeah.
And then being willing to hear back what they think and accept it, even if we don't like it.
That's right.
Agree with them. But that's an important lesson to, okay, we're looking at things in a different way. That's okay. We can still love each other.
Exactly. And when our kids were the adults now, but when they were younger, a lot of our important conversations took place at the dinner table. Mm-hmm. We made sure that we ate together in the evening for dinner, and sometimes we would sit at the table even after having finished eating, couple hours just talking about events of the day or important books that we have read, and that has continued now. I mean, when we have cookouts and other occasions where we gather as a family, we'll engage in conversations, Jed, sometimes 4 hours. Mm-hmm. And I must say, in engaging in those conversations, I have learned a lot from my children, because I'm open to what they're saying and their perspective on things. And I recognize that, I came of age in a different era. I had to, because of Jim Crow and segregation, I had to learn to appreciate myself and love myself and understand that my community was valuable as any other community. I mean, if you're in a situation where you're constantly told that you have no worth and no value, it's hard to break through that, So, but my kids grew up knowing who they were, feeling empowered, knowing that they belonged. I mean, in my earlier years, my wife and I, we spent time trying to prove that we belong, and they don't see it that way. So I and my wife learn a lot from them and listen to them. And they actually, because we have our own book publishing company, Just Us Books, that my wife and I started 35 years ago, and we're still publishing books. And they are very involved and engaged in the operation of the company. And much of our marketing come from them because we are old school. I mean, things have passed us by, and it's when you are wedded to the way you used to do things, even though you try to learn new ideas and new approaches, it's not as easy for us as it is for them because they are closer to the I guess to the newness of it, and so they engage it. We have to see how well it works, before we try it, and that's important. You don't want to just rush into anything. But I think a lot of times they get it quicker than we do.
Amen.
Quicker than we do.
Amen. Yep, absolutely. It sounds like you have the same kind of great relationship with your kids and your adult kids that I have with my adult kids. And I believe those relationships are built when they're young.
That's right.
4, 5, 6 years old, and you're sitting down at the table every night, coming together and talking and being respectful.
That's right. That's right.
Reading together. And it's just wonderful. And that's the message that I want to share with families out there is.
Yeah, exactly. That
time, eat together, read together, publish books together. It's so important.
Yeah.
So what's the, you said you were out publicizing the book and promoting the book. What was there any question from a kid that at any of those live events that really stood out or that surprised you?
I think, Jed, what surprised me, and not just from kids, but from adults as well, they only know bits and pieces of that history. And so what I've been able to do, and Don Tate also participated in a couple of these with me, is to put meat on the bone, so to say, to provide context so they can understand what it meant mentally for people dealing with that, what it meant for them physically when they were dealing with Jim Crow and dealing with segregation and fighting against it, being arrested. They don't really know the complete story because Black history, but history in general, I think mostly is taught by providing dates, events, names, but the context is often missing. So when I'm talking about exactly like in my coming of age memoir, Defiant, I got so many letters from people who thanked me by writing this book, help them understand what it meant to live through this period, to actually experience all of the racism and what it did to that little boy, who's growing up, what it did to his family. Again, we don't really think of the people per se. I mean, when I say people, I'm not talking about the heroes and the sheroes, but the average person who's going through this and what it meant to them and how it impacted them and impacted the family. And I think also understanding in order to get to this place where we all see each other as fellow human beings, that sometimes it's a difficult journey to get to that place. Even we think in terms of racists being able to get to that place, but also the victim of racism have to work to get through that because you have to really appreciate who you are. And until you get to the place where you recognize who you are, appreciate who you are, love who you are, then it's difficult to love somebody else, and so just sharing that and through my book, because a lot of people just don't, the context isn't often provided in teaching, and that's why it's important. I'm a member of a church here, and a few years ago, I have set up a program called Sharing Our Stories. And we would meet once a month on a Saturday and just allow, and a lot of the members of my church are old, they're seniors, just to allow them to share their stories. And the young people were there. And it was just amazing how young people then saw these older people in a different light once they knew their stories, So I think as we move further on this journey as civilization and people trying to find ways to work together, the more we know about each other, the better chance that we have of empathizing with other people. And I think that's where we want to get to. And I think that's what we all are, most of us are pushing to get to, where we, it doesn't matter what color you are or what ethnic group that you come from. You are a fellow human being. And it does not mean that you cast out what you are. That's a part of it, but it doesn't define you totally and exclusively. Yeah. We are all part of the human race.
Yeah. Well, I think having conversations as families are reading The Day Madear Voted together would give kids a little bit of context, help them hear those stories. And I think it's going to make a difference. And
yes, I think so.
I'm excited that this book is out there.
Yeah.
Wade, where can we go to find out more about The Day Madear Voted and find out more about you?
I have a personal website. It's booksbywadehudson.com, booksbywadehudson.com. And we also have an online store. It's justusbooks.com. And the book can be found in bookstores everywhere, really. But we encourage people to support independent bookstores and also Black-owned bookstores. But it's available on Amazon. I don't like to push Amazon, but it is available there, too.
It's there, and all we need to – and another thing we like to remind folks is that you can go to your public library and just ask.
That's right.
Harry.
That's right.
Day Madear Voted.
That's right. That's right. So. Yeah. And I think there are some librarians who are doing some wonderful things with the book, too, with young people, discussing with book discussion groups. I think what we probably end up doing is to do a discussion guide that will help facilitate more in-depth conversations about the book.
Super. We've had a great time speaking about The Day Madear Voted, the brand new picture book, very important picture book from our guest, Wade Hudson. Wade, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed. I enjoyed our conversation, and hope to see you around when we get to Boston one of these days.
Absolutely, my friend. Anytime.
Okay. Take care. Have a good day.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids. Will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. We also hope you've enjoyed the show so much that you're inspired to write a 5-star review of the show on Apple, Spotify, or the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you find your favorite shows. We'd love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, and at Jedley Magic on X. We have a great YouTube channel where you can find many episodes of the show. You can also find our Drawing With Your Kids and our STEM is Family Fun videos. The address is youtube.com/readingwithyourkids. And of course, our website is readingwithyourkids.com. You can visit our Certified Great Read Wall of Fame and use the contact button up at the top of the page to send us a message. Let us know what you love about the show. Let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the show. And if you are an author and you would like to be considered to be a guest on the show, please visit readingwithyourkids.com and click on the Authors Click Here button up at the top of the page. Find out how you can be a part of this really fun experience and tell thousands and thousands of Kidlit fans all over the world about your fantastic children's book. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we'll start by thanking our guest, Jacob Grant. Please be sure to check out Umami. And, of course, Wade Hudson. Please be sure to check out The Day Madear Voted. Real great book, especially at this time of year as we approach Election Day. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Rayling Tang, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.